Everything would be fine if Anna didn't cause confusion in my soul. Several times she tried to restore the former relationship with me, but each time I rejected her advances with disgust. I didn't care about it. I had my fiery, tireless, mind-blowing Ted. And this disgusting Anna. I could not stand her. Besides, I was afraid of her. Yes, I was afraid. I thought she was a spy for the Yellow Devil. She will bring me only trouble. But I still won't give in to her. Not for nothing. Ted was indefatigable in amorous pleasures. I, too, because of the novelty of the impressions, did not give in to him, trying to find the passion of a woman in myself. At first, I had not yet felt the real, maddened pleasure that forces her to give all of herself without a trace to the power of male strength. But I tried to bring Ted to such a state that he would be excited all the time and would want me again and again. That's when all this theory, which I recently studied in detail at our school, came in handy. That I tortured Ted with love pleasures and graceful caresses. I sometimes took such seductive poses that when he looked at me, he shook like a fever. His torch was a toy for me, and I played with it as I pleased. I kneaded him, stroked him, breathed on him, and did many other impossible things. His enormous torch evoked in me 1,000 as yet unrealized desires, to which was added a portion of fear because of its immeasurable size. With indescribable pleasure, I felt him with my hands, legs, stomach, breasts, lips, back, cheeks, hips, my whole body. Probably, this infatuation with him explained my first orgasm. Every day I fell more and more in love with Ted. I liked everything about him, his strong tall figure, his hairy body, his laugh, and even his rude manners, which strangely fit into my attitude towards him. In turn, he also did not remain indifferent to me, and although in a rough form, he expressed his love to me in every possible way. He was deeply satisfied that he was able to ignite such a passion in me. Seeing Ted made me want to lie under him all the time. I was no longer frightened by the size of his torch. I learned how to deal with him and adapted very cleverly to avoid uncomfortable feelings. Usually I would climb on top of Ted myself and a struggle would begin, in which both sides would eventually be defeated. It is clear that with Ted I tried all kinds of poses and methods. Fortunately, Ted knew how to restrain himself. Suddenly, an incident happened that was related to further dramatic events. Once, Anna came into my room again with a silk whip in her hand. Her beautiful face and yellow eyes were clearly showing excitement. "Forgive me, Katie, for everything. But I can't do without you. Come on, take it. Beat me. Maybe really beat her. I would beat this Gorgio's viper to unconsciousness. But my blows, as I knew well from experience, would only cause her sweet ecstasy. No, no. This will not happen." At that moment, the door opened, and Ted appeared on the threshold.
"You? What do you need here?"
"She wants to be punished."
"What? Oh, you bitch."
Ted slapped her with a swing, then a second, a third. Anna swayed several times, but continued to hold the whip in her hand. Moreover, there was a smile on her reddened face. She suddenly swung her whip at Ted.
"What?"
Red opened his mouth in surprise, and quickly grabbed Anna's hand. He threw her on the couch with her back up and slapped her buttocks several times with force. Anna did not make a sound, only bit her lower lip. Enraged, Ted pulled her dress up her back and grabbed the whip. Anna appeared without panties, and her elastic buttocks barely perceptibly shuddered from several strokes of the whip. Ted immediately put down the whip and began to beat her buttocks with his heavy, strong hands so that Anna's entire ass bounced high on the sofa, became very red and soon turned completely red. But Anna was silent. Ted continued to strike, trying to get a cry of pain, a moan, a complaint out of her. It is useless. I watched this scene with a sinister feeling. But suddenly I noticed some indecision in Ted's strokes. And immediately I paid attention to the fact that this girl is barely perceptibly raising her buttocks to meet Ted's hand. Oh! Merciful gods! After all, this is exactly what she needed. Dodging Ted's blows, breaking away from him, running away was not a problem for her. Meanwhile, Ted hesitantly rested his hand on her ass, which she tossed up, and looked curiously at something between her thighs. Oh no. This will not happen. I ran up to them and took Ted's hand. Stop hitting. Right now. Let her go. My pressure was so rapid that Ted was confused.
As you wish, fine, and you, go.
Ted started to lift Anna off the couch. She looked pleased, like she liked it, like she wanted it. I shook her by the shoulders, helped Ted lead her to the door, gave her the whip, and adjusted her dress. Anna's legs trembled, her knees buckled, her stomach and hips curved unnaturally. As she walked, she gave me a strange look that I hastened to turn away and close the door behind her. I sighed but noticed that Ted looked distracted. He was circling the room in silence. He lost his mood from the commotion with lustful Anna. Yes, after a while, the incident was smoothed over by joint efforts. We went to bed. But when Ted took me, thoughts about what had just happened did not leave him. He talked to me less than usual, although he took me more passionately, even more shamelessly than before. A few more days passed, and I felt that Ted was completely in my power. Once, when we were lying on the bed after the love games, I asked him out loud. Do you want to know what was written on that piece of paper? Ted looked at me very seriously, was silent for a long time, and finally said,
Why?
You have been pushing for this all along.
And now I don't want to know anything. This damned piece of paper is going to cause a lot of trouble.
I hung it on his neck and barely audible whispered in his ear, Let's run away from here, Ted. Together. I love you so much. I have a lot of money, you said it yourself, and we will live a quiet, peaceful, happy life with you. Ted was silent for a long time, and I got scared. Finally he said,
I think about it all the time. But it is very complicated. The boss has long arms and a lot of money. He will get us out from under the ground.
I leaned close to him and hurriedly whispered, I know where we should go. They will hide us there, they will hide us well. Listen, this is what was on that paper. And I told him the contents of the note. Ted began to think.
It is indisputable that HR is Hiroshima, that YKH is Yokohama.
Ted and I spent the rest of the night discussing possible escape options, but couldn't come up with anything real.
Let's sleep. We may understand something in the morning.
For several days in a row, we couldn't talk about anything but escape. In the end, Ted decided to contact the peaceful people mentioned in the note. Unfortunately, we had no idea that every morning when I went to eat breakfast, damned Hanako was listening to a tape recorder of all our conversations with Ted. One night, when Ted and I were fast asleep, tired of love, I was woken up by some noise. When I opened my eyes, I didn't understand what was happening and suddenly I was petrified with horror. Hanako's face loomed in front of me, he had a gun in his hand.
One sound and you will die.
My God. Ted was lying on the floor tightly bound, with a gag in his mouth. Hanako pointed a gun at me, took my robe off the hanger and threw it at me. There was a cowardly haste in his movements that he commanded me in a low voice.
Get dressed, bitch. And faster.
Approaching the door, he opened it wide. The Japanese raised Ted. Only now I noticed how badly he was beaten. There was not a living place on his face. He moaned loudly. One of the Japanese made him shut up with a hard blow to the head. Suddenly someone's careful steps were heard in the corridor. I looked towards the door and saw Anna's face. Ah, Ellie. It is impossible to even imagine what a nightmare poor Katie went through. I, of course, asked her to tell me the whole story to the end. But Katie took her time with the story. And I understood why. The memories exhausted her terribly. Apparently, her nerves were at their limit. She just needed to cool down and move away from these heavy memories. I had no doubt that when she talked about her love with Ted, she seemed to experience everything anew. I understood her. Her story also had a depressing effect on me. And how was she, unfortunate? Can you imagine? Yes, I received your letter. Katie and I sent you a telegram inviting you and Dick to join us for the holidays at the farm. How glad I am that we will meet soon. I want to know how Dick did it to you the first time. You are so sparing about how he took you. But dear Ellie, I am madly curious about the how. You understand. You can see for yourself how I described Katia's first experiences to you in detail, without missing a single word she said. Well, I really want you to describe to me in detail all your experiences and sensations, especially for the first time. Do you understand in what position were you lying? How did he lie on you? What did he say? With the smallest details. You will hand the letter to me at the farm. Good. Over the past few days, I have met Will several times in our cozy garden town. Do not think. There was nothing special. We kissed hard and I let him touch all my tender parts several times. But only a little. I will tell you more during the meeting. So come. Katie is really asking for you. Your Rose.
Having read to the end of the 5th letter, Inspector Carter thought deeply. Then, taking out a notebook, he made some marks in it.
Interesting. It will be necessary to urgently report on this matter. The guys from military intelligence will figure out what's going on.
Carter began to write, but immediately, pushing the paper away from him, thought again.
It's a shame to leave such a matter in other people's hands. After all, it's a sensation that will overshadow everything. What a career I can make on this.
This is what the inspector thought, and sensational headlines in the press were already flashing in his eyes.
Inspector Carter solved the biggest crime of the 20th century. Murder on sexual grounds. American girl trapped by an Italian prostitute. Spies from the Japanese public house. Exploring 3 continents in search of the secret of the spy engineer.
A cautious knock on the door interrupted Carter's thoughts.
Hey, who's there?
An agent appeared on the doorstep.
What's new?
Sir, she is alive.
Who? What are you talking about?
The doctor says that he gave her some kind of injection, that her organs are not damaged, that it is only a deep unconsciousness, a shock. And she will live.
Why didn't they report it immediately?
The agent began to make excuses, but the inspector pushed him aside and hurried out of the office, saying as he went,
Stay here and don't let anyone in here without me.
The agent sighed, closed the door behind the inspector, looked with interest at the pile of letters in multicolored envelopes lying in 2 stacks on the table, and, going to the window, began to look out into the street, singing something under his breath and drumming his fingers on the table. He did not hear how from behind, in the far corner of the room, a curtain covering a niche with a small door moved, and a girl with a beautiful yellowish face appeared from there. She had a small pistol in her hands, which she held, pointing it at the back of the agent, who continued to drum his fingers on the glass and sing some playful tune, not the least bit aware of the threat he was facing. The girl approached the table with inaudible steps and, without taking her eyes off the policeman, calmly and deftly put both bundles of letters into the bag hanging on her shoulder. After taking the letters, the girl turned her back to the curtain and disappeared. Still, some unconscious anxiety made the agent slowly turn around. At this moment, he might still notice a slight swaying of the curtain, but his horrified gaze was directed at the empty table.